If your squat is stuck and you're getting clobbered by 315, or running into a wall with your first 405, or maybe you're just staring down your first 500+ pound squat, this video is going to talk you through those milestones, those potential plateaus for your squat, and break it all down into novice, intermediate, and advanced lifting advice. Now, don't worry if your milestones don't match up with these exactly. This advice is general enough that anybody stuck at any milestone, novice, intermediate, or advanced can use these tips. So let's get into it, starting with level 1, 315.
Or 225, or 135.
Or whatever. Or maybe it's the bar.
Maybe you're just stepping into the gym.
If you're stuck at 315 or whatever your novice milestone may be, first and foremost, fix your brace. Almost every single lifter that I've worked with has needed to work on learning how to brace and then developing the skill of their own individual brace. So whether you're a lifter who's maybe a little more extended or has a little bit more pelvic tilt, learning how to connect the shelf, shoulders, upper body, above your ribs, to your hips and legs that are producing the force by effectively using your trunk and the muscles therein is absolutely paramount to being able to squat. That is step 1, that's the basement, we gotta do that first. And on that note, let's give you a little demo. All right, so I'm here half naked in front of you so that I can go through a bit of a demonstration on bracing. When we talk about bracing, the two big things I want to think about are the contraction and the breathing. Now, often people will have one of these things, but not the other. I'm going to try to teach you how to get both of them at the same time. What we're trying to do is first, let's go through the whole contraction part of it, right? I want you to follow along with me here, home audience, unless you're driving and listening to this, in which case don't, but just breathe out, like, and then keep going, and then keep going, and then keep going, and then go more, a little more, right there. And you'll see how everything is pulled in and your ribs will just be pulled down by how hard your abs are contracting. Chances are your pelvis is gonna be tucked in a little bit by how hard your abs are contracting. And that is what we're looking for in the brace. We want that contraction first, and then we breathe into that, and then just squeeze it a little harder. And the belt is gonna essentially double as a more aggressive abdominal wall. So the belt helps you increase what's called intra-abdominal pressure by allowing you to push out harder and giving something to resist you, thereby increasing the pressure within. The real trick to bracing is not necessarily limited by your core strength, and that maybe contradicts something we're gonna talk about later, but most of the strength of your brace, and the reason that we hold our breath like this is because air pressure and that unmoving solid block that becomes your trunk is way stronger than just like trying to flex your back into the bar, right? So same thing with the belt. Belt gets clamped shut, we contract, breathe in, and then recontract, like re-clamp everything down on top. Get out of my face. And the next component of the brace is the shelf. What I mean by shelf is where the bar sits on your back. If the bar's rolling around, or if you have to flare your elbows out so far that they're parallel to the floor in order for the bar to not fall off you while you're standing there with it, there's work that needs to be done in order to keep the bar stable and tie the upper back and bar into that brace. Now, if any of this is too complex or kind of doesn't make sense on its face, I definitely recommend that you go and check out our definitive guide to squat. I go in depth on the shelf, on bracing, on all of that, all the nuance, all that good meat. The good stuff is in that video. This is kind of a general overview, so we're gonna keep going. Number 2, it worked for bench. It works here too, to some extent. You need to squat more to squat more. Strength training and the adaptations from resistance training in general exist in what's called a dose-response relationship. Like a pharmaceutical like Tylenol or something. The more you get, the more effect. And just like a drug, too much can cause unwanted side effects. What I'm recommending here is if there's room, you can probably implement more squatting. If you're only squatting once a week, or if you're only squatting a total of 3 sets a week, you can add more. And if you're a novice, you're probably gonna be able to add weight almost every session. Number 3, play. What I mean by that is mess around with your technique a little bit. I think that some lifters leave gains off the bar. You know, they miss out on kilos because they didn't think to try low bar squatting, or they didn't try a wider or narrower stance, or playing around with their thumbs over the bar versus thumbs under the bar. Little things like that can go a long ways, and especially when you're just starting out, you're kind of laying the foundation for the technique that you will further refine as you move through your journey. If you don't take the time to experiment with those different variables, I think you're probably doing yourself a disservice. Now, if you are going to experiment with those variables one at a time, make detailed notes, compare similar loading. 75% is a great place to do some experimentation. And wouldn't you know it, we got a video on this too, on how to implement these different technique changes and mess around with variables in order to kind of refine your technique using a, dare I call it, a scientific process? You can check that video out, description below, maybe on the screen here somewhere. And lastly, I should not have to say this, but eat and sleep. If you're not getting adequate protein intake in every day, or even most of the days, on average over weeks, and if you're not sleeping enough, you're just not gonna gain as much strength as you could. And maybe your nutrition and sleep are crap and you're still getting stronger. Imagine how much stronger you could get if you dialed those things in. You wanna take it a step further? If you're comfortable going into a caloric surplus, the squat loves a surplus. Just look at me. I love a surplus too. Level 2, 405. Now I will say again, the numbers don't matter. It's like, whose line is it anyway? The points are made up and nothing matters.
Everything's made up and the points don't matter. The points are just like the sports in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition.
Nothing matters. What we're talking about is intermediate training tips. The first piece of advice I have for the intermediate tier here, for the mini boss of your squat, is to auto-regulate. Now, on the bench press, I've found that it's substantially easier to just kind of add more stimulus, right? Bench more to bench more, and then bench more than more to bench more than when you benched more to bench more. But with the squat, favors a bit more of a controlled approach, in my experience anyways. And what that means is that you should attempt to control the magnitude of each of these exposures. So if you're gonna be adding more squat stimulus, which over time is necessary, we need to provide progressive overload in order to keep adapting. We need to do so in a measured way. One of the best ways to ensure that we're not over or underdoing it is a tool called RPE. Now, RPE is kind of the king of auto-regulation. There's plenty of resources out there for it. We're just gonna keep going here. Learn to use RPE, implement it, let it help you guide your training, and that way we'll know when to pull back, when to put more weight on the bar, and we'll be able to add more stress without overdoing it. Secondly, my tip for you is to train your brace. We talked earlier about the importance of learning how to brace, developing the skill of bracing. But if you're not already, I think at this point, you can start trying to intentionally affect your brace with the training that you're doing. Now, this can be from an SSB or paused squat or pin squat or something like that. Or in a lot of cases, what I recommend intermediate lifters do is to sort of break out the muscles that contribute to the brace and train them with isolation movements. Get on doing some rows, get on doing some back extensions, get on doing some side bends, load that stuff up, do rows both heavy and light in the 6 to 8 rep range and the 12 to 15 rep range. Do some planks, find a couple ab exercises that you suck at and get good at them. A lot of the times breaking out this work And isolating the muscles responsible for the brace can contribute and make sure that your brace comes up at the same level or same speed as the rest of your squat. Number 3, another one that I would kind of be surprised if you weren't already doing, but get on a program. If you're not already on a program, that is such an easy box to check. Intentionally and intelligently organizing your training, making sure that there's a point to the things that you're doing, making sure that one week logically follows the next. If you're interested, you can go to calgarybarbell.com. You can check out the Calgary Barbell training app where we've got 50+ programs, and you get weekly form checks from myself and the rest of our beautiful and wonderful coaches at Calgary Barbell. Or you could look at working with one of those coaches, including myself, one-on-one. All that stuff's at calgarybarbell.com. Or you can head down into the description box below and just download the free 16-week program for free. That's it. Just have it. Take it. We want you to get good at this stuff. I want you to be successful. If you're failing to plan, you are planning to fail, or something like that. Take your newfound skills of auto-regulation for a ride. Zoom out a little bit, start looking at the big picture, and you'll get that squat going again. Level 3, 500 plus or minus, because the numbers are just for the algorithm. Tip number 1 for the advanced bracket of breaking through the milestone number is to accessorize. Now, for any lift, obviously, it's important that you select appropriate accessory exercises, but I think in the case of the squat, it can be very much make or break, and I think at an advanced level, it matters maybe more than on the bench. I'm gonna present a really quick case study in which I want you to look at Brittany Schlater. Now, she's a very, very successful lifter who I've been coaching for a number of years, and about a year and a half ago, we ran into a pretty substantial squat plateau. We had a couple meets where her numbers slid backwards, and then we implemented the safety bar squat. Since then, her squat has now started climbing, and we've put a total of 12.5 kilos on it in about a year, which when you're at that level is a pretty good rate. In the case of Brittany, her upper back was caving, and no matter how much upper back work we did, her upper back would get stronger, but it wouldn't necessarily be able to integrate as well into the squat. Whereas bringing her safety bar squat from, struggling with 200 to 220 up to now, I think pausing doubles at 250 has had a substantial impact on her ability to squat. If you can assess your specific weaknesses at this point and try to come up with accessory movements that help, we did a video on that recently, you can check that out. Then, I think selecting that exercise, hammering it, utilizing it for a long period of time and getting good at it can have a profound impact on your ability to continue to progress at an advanced level. My next piece of advice is to accessorize, again, but differently. In that last section, we talked about what Bondarchuk would call special developmental exercises. And these exercises will target the movement that is the focus of the competitive training. So in the case of the squat, we're looking at things like the pause squat or pin squat. Again, things that target the movement and the pattern. What I want to talk about being important now is what the good doctor would call special preparatory exercises. These are further down the scale of specificity. We're getting into isolation exercises. We're getting into movements that target the muscle as opposed to the movement pattern. As an advanced lifter, you're likely, again, gonna get to a point where there's a bottleneck in how much stress you can put on the body, right? Maybe it's your back or your hips or whatever. But we can't just add squat stress ad infinitum. It just doesn't work like that. What we need to do is come up with creative ways to continue to progressively overload the lifter. If, for example, your bottleneck is your back, something like a leg press would be a great way to get a lot more training stimulus onto the muscles that can tolerate it and the joints that can tolerate it, while getting around the recovery demands of whatever body part or joint doesn't agree to being trained that hard. By choosing appropriate SPEs, we can continue to scale training stimulus while being intentional and mindful of our recovery. In conclusion, whatever your milestone is, whatever numbers haunt your dreams or inspire you to keep pushing and going back to the gym. I hope that throughout the course of this, we've given you some advice that is relevant to you and that helps you continue in your journey towards being stronger. If you liked it, leave a like, hit the subscribe. And I actually was wondering, what is your milestone number? And tell me in the comments below what you've done to get past milestones that you've gotten past, and see if we can give other people some more advice on top of what I've put in this video so far. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.